Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to another episode of Plugged In, where we plug you into the socket of reality. We're your hosts, Zishan and Ellie, and today we'll be discussing concerning the hurdles to seeking and conveying the truth of Islam today and how to overcome them. And to discuss this with us, we are very lucky to have Brother Junaid to join us for this discussion. Brother Junaid is the founder of Deen Media Canada, which is a platform to clarify the Muslim stance on popular ideas in our time. It is also a platform to inspire and motivate Muslims toward giving dawah, as well as train and share skills and resources in the community. Brother Junaid has volunteered with various Muslim organizations in Canada and has an interest in both business management, social ideologies, and community development. Brother Junaid, we'd like to welcome you to the show.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers. How are you?
Pretty good. Wa alaikum salam. Before we...
And you said special, or you said lucky guest, lucky to have Junaid. I don't know about that.
We'll find out, right? No, just kidding.
And that's not the first time I made that joke, by the way.
Yes. I know that.
How are you? Yeah, actually, you know what? I think this is a fantastic topic. First of all, Jazakallah khair to both you guys for doing this. I think we also, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the dynamics of Muslims in Canada, followed by how Muslims in Canada should seek the truth, and then lastly, maybe some ideas of some examples of some contemporary ideas that have been injected into the community.
Yes, it sounds good. You can lead the way on that. But before we just kind of get into that, I was wondering if you can just kind of, because this is what, if you don't mind, is that okay, Junaid?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, I was coming across some of your writings here, and you said that when we stop caring about spreading the deen within ourselves and society, we allow our hearts to die. So, I just want to I guess this will segue in what you want to get into, but I guess when did you start caring? Because also for the benefit of the listeners, we just want to give kind of a personal backdrop to our guests.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. So, the Deen Canada platform, it's myself and a few other brothers. Inshallah, they'll be more involved as time passes, and both of you guys, inshallah, will be involved at some point. We'd like to collaborate with you guys.
Great. Yep.
It's geared towards Muslims in Canada, and the reason is because I myself was born and raised here in Canada, and growing up, alhamdulillah, there's a lot of blessings I've had, but with every community, it has its pros and cons, and so I've been able to, alhamdulillah, monitor and observe the UK community to an extent, the US community, the Australian community, and I realized that yes, we, Muslims in Canada have strengths, but we also have areas of improvement. So Deen Canada platform is really geared towards two things. There's number one, comprehensive media, everything from mini documentaries, video, inspiring people to give dawah, and then secondly, to have like a hands-on training program, which is I'm still playing around with names, but something like Masjid Trainer, where we actually go into organizations and masjids and help them set up proper programs, and it may not even be us, but someone we're networked with. And a lot of businesses work this way too. So the model is practical. I don't have to have 100 people on a team. I can because I know someone. I basically am a middleman and connect the two, and it's all free. There's no any profit involved in it, and all of this is inshallah ta'ala for the sake of Allah. So my story is I was born and raised here. Went to public school. I went to Islamic school for once Islamic classes once a week, and then but that really wasn't enough. If you ask me at the age of 17 or in my early 20s, who are name 10 Sahaba, or tell me about what does Tawheed mean, I would not have been able to tell you. So it was only until I joined the MSA and I started to volunteer in Islamic organizations that had a focus on Islamic knowledge. That's the key, because some Islamic organizations are just focused on volunteer work, which is great, but there also needs to be a component of Islamic knowledge there. And so it was when I was attending, different halaqat, courses, conferences, classes, and series that's when I, alhamdulillah, really was amazed by how beautiful our Deen is, and I realized this is something I have to share. So that's the story in a nutshell. I had the mentors, MSAs, organizations that were of influence to me, and I later on now, as a project, I'm planning to tailor this to the Muslim community in Canada. And just as a last note here, that doesn't mean that I'm trying to set up a localized version of Islam, like it's only for Muslims in Canada, but rather we'll always be one ummah. And so the goal is to really connect Muslims with their deen, but also the entire ummah, inshallah ta'ala.
Yeah, and I just want to comment on that because it's true that a lot of the Muslim intellectual activists they find a reawakening when they go to university. So when they get when they get involved with the MSA and then they meet some inspiring colleague, that kind of sets the spark. If you read stories of some of the high profile activists, Muslim activists out there, they have a very similar story when they're in college or university. They get in touch with the MSA and they get in touch with some inspiring colleagues, and that kind of sets a spark. But I think what you're doing, that's great, because not majority of the people do not go to university, so they don't have that opportunity to get in connection with a structured organization such as the MSA at universities.
Yeah, and if they do go to university, and by the way, you guys feel free to interrupt me because as much as you like, because I want to say that the thing is, if they do go to university, they don't join the MSA, or they find the MSA is either judgmental, like too far to the right, or it's too far to the left. Like there's no focus on Islamic education and reformation. So that is an issue. So what people need to look for in their community is a principled organization or a principled shayukh. They don't have to be perfect, because there's no shayukh or personality that's perfect, but someone who can essentially connect us with Allah and His Messenger. And so that's
no, I was just going to say, and the thing is, I won't equate today's MSA with the time when we went to college and university, because I would argue that the MSA is different. It's a little different than it was back then. So because I think I mean, that's another topic we can get into. Yeah. But basically, we're all the similar, like we're on the same kind of age category, all three of us, right?
Right.
So So probably Ali is the youngest out of us, but you're 19, right? Ali? Ali, you're 19, correct?
We'll be 19 next month.
Mashallah, man, mashallah.
All right, okay. Okay.
The MSA, I still have friends.
Yeah.
I still have friends in the MSA. They are doing good things, and I mean, we should do another show on that, inshallah ta'ala, where we can actually bring some MSA execs here, because they are going through a struggle. I'll just actually share one of those examples now.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
One of the MSA leaders in the GTA actually told me how there was pressure from the student council for the MSA to collaborate with the LGBT community.
Yeah.
So this is coming from, and the student council, they approve all the MSA events, they approve their funding, and now here they're trying to slip in some of those ideas, and people like Brother Daniel Hakikatu, they talk a lot about liberalism and secularism, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about towards the end. But before that, I wanted to just really quick talk about the dynamics of the Muslim community in Canada, our strengths and some of our areas of improvement, because I think it's very important to be aware of this. We need, as they say, understanding the problem is half of the solution. So we really need to understand where the Muslim community in Canada is. So number one, I think it's fairly cohesive here, because whether we'd like to admit it or not, the passive-aggressive or non-confrontational attitude of many Canadians, at the end of the day, influences Muslims in Canada. And so we're kind of like passive-aggressive here. And the good thing about that is that we don't really bump heads with each other too much. But sometimes, that can be a bad thing, because when we do have conflict, we don't know how to discuss things in a brotherly manner, or we take offense, we're oversensitive when we disagree. And so you do have divisions, like, for example, in the Greater Toronto area, you have over 100 masajid. It is, from one perspective, it's very divided. But those imams, I know they respect each other. They'll greet each other. They'll say salams to each other. So there's no like hate. There's no like deep-seated hatred or anything like that. But at the same time, there's no skill set to learn. There's no the skill of collaborating and working together isn't really there. That's kind of missing. And so that's one thing. And the second thing is the strong sense of pluralism that you have in this country. So Canada is very welcoming to some extent, and that can be a pro and a con because, yes, for example, Justin Trudeau, I can say he's done some good things. He's brought in some Syrian refugees, but at the same time, he's a diehard liberal, and with that is going to come the idea of liberalism, and Muslims need to understand that while there might be some overlap, at the end of the day, there's a lot of differences between Islam and liberalism and things that conflict. And I'll just share a quick story. I actually tried to meet Justin Trudeau. I went to an iftar dinner at the Islamic Foundation, and I couldn't even shake his. I wanted to go up to him, shake his hand, and then actually criticize some of his policies, but I couldn't because he was engulfed. He was circled by a group of Muslims that were just trying to shake his hand, get a selfie, and so that kind of there. Yeah. I mean, they were kids, so I don't blame them too much. But I think the community
and uncles and aunties.
Yeah, I think the community should have been better prepared. Because look, when Justin Trudeau meets with the Jewish community, rest assured they're not just trying to take a selfie with him. They're there to have a serious talk. So I'm not I'm not a fan of these politicians personally per se, but I think even if we're going to invite them to our masajid, we need to actually engage them, do dawah to them, and not. Whereas I think what the attitude has been is like, well, you're coming to see us. Oh, we're so happy you're not an Islamophobe. Thank you for allowing us to live in this country, type of thing. It's more of a defeatist approach, and so our mindset has to change. We can still live in this country and be citizens, and at the same time, we can still be critical of the government. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, dawah is the operative word, right? Which from many so-called proponents, followers of the Quran, which is missing, because we should be representing which can improve human society, right? So we should come out like that for the public. So if you don't mind, I just want to share one example. As people living in this country, we're very proud of the universal healthcare system, right? Which is a great social system. But if you ask many Muslims, they can't connect it. They don't know where this actually comes from. Muslims were the ones. If you look back in the late 700s. Was under one of the Khalifas. He actually brought in this idea of universal health care, which provided, free medical accommodation, even income when they were in hospital to replace income because they were not working. And when I made that point, people have been very surprised, and even non-Muslims are even more surprised, even to the extent where their biases come out and their discrimination comes out, right? So I think we should be aware of our history and heritage and show that Islam has something to offer human society for a cure for a lot of the ailments in society, right? So. Right.
Barakallahu fika for sharing that point. Just to quickly finish up on this dynamics of Muslims in Canada, knowledge is a huge component of it. I know we have a lot of, if you look at the events that we have here in the GTA, we have events all the time, alhamdulillah. But realistically, people are not just going to hop around to event and go from one event to another. They're either going to stick with an institution, or they're going to be really convinced, or they're going to want to see a particular speaker. And I think that although we tend to think, okay, there's a lot of knowledge available on YouTube, the reality is the average Muslim in the GTA or the average Muslim in Canada needs to be more connected to knowledge. And what I find is a really good strategy to address this is to do something called da'wah training. And it was a huge changer for myself as well. And you guys can jump in here and let me know if you agree or not. But the thing with da'wah training is that when you're doing da'wah training, and I've done da'wah training multiple times, you're not just preaching to the people in the classroom, or you're not just telling them, hey, this is how you talk to your non-Muslim coworkers, or this is how you talk to your non-Muslim friends and strangers and neighbors, but you're actually alleviating their doubts in the Deen itself. So I find actually a good strategy to get Muslims in Canada to, because if you look at other communities, for the UK example or Australia, I do feel like Muslims in Canada are lagging behind when it comes to knowledge a little bit. Even the US, you have more knowledge there sometimes. In Canada, we're a little bit behind in some regards. So I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
Yeah, Ali, you want to jump in?
No, I think you pretty much put it very well there. I think I do agree with that, and we definitely need to, get our community involved. Programs such as you mentioned, data training, and they need to be closely attached and linked, to our history, our heritage, and obviously, knowledge itself. So yeah, I agree with you there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I usually recommend Muslims start with a topic from the Tafsir Surah Al-Baqarah. Fatiha, Surah Al-Baqarah. That really gives an overview of Deen. It's excellent. And secondly, the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. Every Muslim should go to the Seerah, because if you don't understand the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, then it's going to be very difficult to understand Islam and the purpose of Islam and this different kind of struggles and tests that Rasulullah ﷺ went through. So when you see something, so a Muslim doing something or an organization doing something, you can say, okay, you know what, this is very similar to the Seerah. Whereas if you don't have exposure to the Seerah, then you may not make that connection, or you may not see the relevant, even when it comes to our daily politics here, you may not understand certain things. So it's important to have a deep understanding of the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. And so yeah, I hope inshallah ta'ala that regardless of what we do, we can have a focus inshallah ta'ala on education here in Canada, and I don't just mean just lectures, but I mean more of active learning than passive learning. And what I mean by that is exposing people to different environments. So if you're doing a halaqah, also have a Q&A, make it interactive, maybe have a workshop setting, maybe have an activity where the brothers go outside, they're playing sports so they can learn a little bit about brotherhood and team building. Sisters can do something else. So it's like, we also have to change the way people are educated, because if you look at the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they weren't just sitting in a lecture or a class all the time. They were receiving education in different environments from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they were with him in different environments. So I just wanted to summarize that up. I think that's key, and maybe I just wanted to talk a little bit about seeking the truth. I know we're almost out of time here, but how does one seek the truth when it comes to this is just kind of my general advice for Muslims in Canada, because it's like we have all these different ideas and all these different isms, whether it's hedonism, secularism, liberalism, different forms, different strands of Christianity, militarism, capitalism, or whatever ideology that's out there. And Muslims who are listening to this, they may not actually know these ideologies by their names, but at the end of the day, we are still influenced by them. Okay, and so what my recommendation is for Muslims in Canada is to, number one, think deeply about the truth. Everyone understands the importance of knowing the truth and not being deceived. And to do that, number one is to make a criteria. And I usually, in my discussions with Christians and even atheists, I'll actually say, before we discuss what's right and what's wrong, let's figure out a criteria as to how we're going to find the truth. So from the ground up, one key thing to remember is that the truth is not going to be defined by what's popular, and it's not going to be defined by our environment. And just to give you a quick example, today the topic of LGBT is very popular in society. If you go to your workplace or you go to school and you have a particular position on the LGBT community, if it's not in line with what's popular, you may actually get a lot of pushback and you may be ostracized to some extent. And so if we know that, and people tend to forget this, it's almost like a shock. If you just go back 50 years or 100 years, the way we used to talk about these issues was completely different. And so people should not forget this. And the point here, again, is that what's popular isn't always correct.
Yeah, definitely. And the criteria for truth should always, like whenever you talk to anyone, be it a Christian or an atheist, the common platform is reason, right? So from
right.
reason, where we Muslims argue, is that you come to the realization of God, the Creator, and from that everything flows, and then that acts as a filter to realize, are you on the haqq or not? Are you on are you standing on clear proof or not? As the Quran states. And yes, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, the reason I bring this up, I want to emphasize this, is because Muslims, again, I'm speaking to Muslims in Canada. We have a slightly different dynamics than other countries in the West, but we are heavily influenced by what's popular. If you take them, I've seen Muslims go through college, and because feminism, for example, was heavily promoted. They came out of school being more inclined, or kind of being a little bit more pro-feminist. And there was a really good article posted by Daniel Hakikatu and Zaid Shackler, actually, if anybody wants to see it on feminism, actually.
Yeah, so, we also had him on our show as well. So.
Oh, really? MashaAllah, yeah. So I advise you to listen to that podcast. The thing is that and again, when I name drop my just in case anyone's wondering, I'm not trying to get people to become attached or become a fan of particular people or personalities, but just for knowledge sakes, inshallah ta'ala, too. People either think you have to be all in or all out when it comes to people and personalities. But you take the good, and you can leave what you disagree with. But the key is to adhere to the Quran and the Sunnah at the end of the day. And I say that as a non-scholar, someone who doesn't come from a scholarly background, but is trying to connect the community to the scholars, inshallah. And then so the second criteria I wanted to talk about, and I think in our discussions before, Ali kind of hinted at this, which is you don't just go off of what we feel, our emotions, or what are I'll often talk to maybe like a Hindu or something like that, and they might be like, well, I had a dream of something, or I just feel like if I stick with my family tradition, this is going to be right. And so just because you feel something, that doesn't mean it's rational. That doesn't mean it's right. And so that needs to be challenged.
Yeah, definitely. And like in the Quran, it says don't follow your what your forefathers believe. Believe what's the truth, right?
Right.
So the Quran is giving you that prescription.
Yeah, but the last thing I think is Muslims in Canada need to realize, and all of us, is that if you do make a sacrifice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you much more. And a lot of people are afraid, am I trying to change my life? Do I have to give up my friends? Do I have to give up my job? Do I have to give up this? I tell them, and I say, take things one step at a time. Don't overthink things. Problems need to be broken down into pieces. Yeah, things are done in baby steps. And so first step is just increase your knowledge, increase your spirituality or your worship, and take some action, on a weekly basis. Commit to a weekly halaqah if you can, in your local city, inshallah, if you can. There's so many. I'm going to just mention this website, facebook.com/GTA Muslims. It's run by some brothers, and they try to connect the Muslim community with certain events. And so I think that people are often afraid, but you have to have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you good if you make that step towards Him. And so that's just to summarize it. Again, the first point is don't judge things by what's pop. Don't make popularity your criteria. Don't let your environment influence you all the time. Number two, don't go off of emotions or desires. And number three, be sincere. Be persistent, and Allah will find the truth. I think we actually did throughout this talk, and I covered the different isms and liberalism and secularism and a few other isms. But there's a lot of material to be read on that by people, and I think it's important too that the community leaders need to kind of deconstruct these ideas for the masses because they are permeating our community to an extent, and it's important that we know what's right and what's wrong.
Mm. Well, I thank you very much, Brother Junaid. Is there a website you want to share with the listeners that they can kind of get in touch with your ideas and thoughts that you share?
Yeah, I think they can. First of all, they should check out your website. You guys are doing great work. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Keep it up. Secondly, Facebook.com/Deen Canada. Anyone needs to get a hold of us there. And lastly, Facebook.com/GTA Muslims. I already I mentioned that. It's a really good website that connects Muslims to local events and knowledge.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your insights. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and we look forward to talking to you again. And I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. And till next time, be plugged in.